Good afternoon, advocates. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this session and the opportunity to hear from First Lady Britainy Beshear. I'm Kathy Dykstra, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Chief Possibility Officer, President, and CEO of Family Scholar House, headquartered in Louisville, Kentucky, and serving over 11,000 families throughout our Commonwealth, all to promote pathways to equity for all. At Family Scholar House, we know that working and advocating on behalf of children is not only an investment in their health and well-being now, but also an investment in our communities in the years to come. This is the next generation of parents, community leaders, legislators, and advocates. It is important work, and we are proud to do it with you. This past year has been especially challenging for us all. And it is important for us to mitigate the immediate and long-term impacts on our children. At heart, I know we all want to keep children safe, providing learning and enrichment for them in all its many forms, and give them opportunities to grow into their full potential. And that is one of the many reasons I am proud to be part of Children's Advocacy Week and pleased to be introducing this conversation with First Lady Britainy Beshear. It has been my privilege to get to know our First Lady, the Governor, and Will and Lila through their volunteer work at Family Scholar House. They first got involved with us prepping Mother's Day meals when Will was in kindergarten, and they have stayed active with our program and our families ever since. This year required some tweaking of traditional activities, and the Beshear family stepped up to join us in the virtual space for book readings, craft activities, and conversation. With her experience working with children from the foster care system, Mrs. Beshear has been a valued resource in the development of Family Scholar House's program for young adults formerly in foster care, and now on a path of credentialing and careers to self-sufficiency. In her official role, our First Lady takes her passion for the well-being and welfare of children to a whole new level. She brings her personal experience as a parent, an advocate, a board member, a strategic thought partner, and a community leader genuinely concerned about children and their families. In this conversation, you will hear her speak about parenting during the pandemic, the importance of mental health supports, military families, being there for young adults as they transition out of foster care, and so much more. We hope that as advocates, you will find some inspiration in her journey speaking up for children. After we hear from First Lady Beshear, please plan to join us to celebrate the talents of Kentucky children as they share their art and participate in musical performances. Again, thank you for all you do on behalf of children.
Hello, we're so happy that you're joining us for a special feature of Children's Advocacy Week. Today, we are highlighting a conversation with Kentucky's First Lady, Britainy Beshear. Ms. Beshear, thank you so much for being here. We know you were at the rally last year, and we appreciate you being part of our virtual event this week.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, we're going to start in a very creative way because I have a student reporter who happens to be one of my grandkids. And when Carson heard that you were going to be on, she wanted to ask you a question. So we're going to turn to student reporter. Carson, do you want to take it from here?
Hi, Mrs. Beshear. I'm Carson Brooks. I am almost 11 years old, and I'm in the 5th grade. I know your son and daughter are my age, and I was wondering how do they like NTI? Do they like it or not?
That's a really good question, Carson. I think it depends on the day, to be honest with you. I think sometimes it goes really well, and sometimes I think it would be a lot easier to be in the classroom with the teachers, especially when challenges arise. And I can't ask Siri for any more help because I feel very strongly at some point Siri is going to tell me to leave a message at the beep. But, you know, they're doing really well. And I know a lot of kids across the Commonwealth, including you, are on NTI, and your teachers are working so hard to make sure that you are getting the best experience you can while we're all healthy at home. So, you know, like I said, it depends on the day. But I think overall, they would really want to be in the classroom over being home. But that's what we have to do to be healthy. And hopefully we'll be back in the classroom soon.
Thanks. Thanks, Carson. Now you have to get back to school, so tell Ms. Beshear goodbye.
Bye, thank you.
Very nice to meet you, Carson.
All right. Well, now everything else that follows is kind of anticlimactic, so but we'll try to pick it up. So I always try to be very transparent with our partners, Ms. Beshear, and I just need to tell them that that when I think about partners that KYA has, man, I heard about Brittainy Beshear way before anybody was running for governor. I heard about Brittainy Beshear from our good friend Kathy Dykstra at Family Scholar House. I heard about Brittainy Beshear from our good partner, the former CEO at Maryhurst, Judy Lambeth. One of my best friends, I believe, may have happened to be your former senior minister, and Dr. Lee Bond always talked about the kind of commitment you had to kids, really out of your faith witness. So I need viewers and partners to know that Mrs. Beshear was a voice for kids long before she became First Lady. And I just need to say that to everybody so you understand kind of where this conversation goes. I, for one, Ms. Beshear, you know, so value the work, for instance, of Maryhurst and Family Scholar House, and just appreciated the fact that you were there way before you were living in that big mansion in Frankfurt. So thanks for what you've done for a long time on behalf of kids.
Well, it's an honor to be mentioned by people like Kathy and Judy and Lee, because those are people who, as you well know, have spent their lifetime advocating for children and helping to make our community a better place to be. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, you know, a person who had some experience, I think, relating to your role, her name was Jackie Kennedy. She wrote that I'll be a wife and mother first, and then First Lady. She talked as much as any First Lady about that balancing act of mom and wife and First Lady. And before we get into kids' issues, I got to ask you about the balance of life and biography, and in the midst of these unprecedented times, how you're doing all that.
Well, I think like most parents and caregivers, you take it day by day and do the best that you can do on any given day. When we first moved to Frankfurt, I wanted to hit the ground running with children's issues that I'm sure we'll get into shortly. And when the first case of COVID hit on March 6th, I knew that I was going to have to put those things on the back burner because I had to take care of my two children. And like so many others out there, figure out how to do NTI, figure out how to do math. Not my best subject, I'll be honest. How to navigate these very abrupt changes to our children's lives that nobody could have anticipated. And so yeah, things had to go on the back burner, but slowly I've been able to find things that I can do from home. And it's actually been kind of fun to work side by side with my children, even though we're all on a screen doing different things. It's been very special to have them home with me at this time. So day by day.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of the things I've appreciated is that you and the governor have talked about kind of your answer to Carson, which is what your own kids were experiencing. Mm-hmm. And whether little boys and girls have a mom and dad like Lila and Will have, whether they're in a tough situation economically or within a family structure, my hunch is that Kentucky's kids have all felt an ebb and flow for the last several months. And I'm wondering if you could just kind of weigh in. given what you've seen and given what you've heard, what kind of encouragement, what kind of advice, what kind of tips have you learned that maybe some of our partners might be able to incorporate? How do you navigate those day-to-day issues of being a mom with those kids at home?
Sure. I think I've learned that kids are resilient. I think that I have seen my children have to handle disappointments and learn how to grow from that. And I think that those two things are very valuable lessons, not only for our children, but us as parents and caregivers, that if we can give our children the tools to navigate those things, that the resilience and the disappointment and the joys and the struggles can really benefit them as they turn into teenagers, young adults, and on into life. But I think one of the things that I have learned, especially during this time, is that I don't have all the answers. And there are days when my kids have been really upset over certain things, whether it's missing their friends or something that's happened here in Frankfurt. And sometimes the best I can do is just tell them it's okay to be angry and get those emotions out in a safe environment and know that I am there for them and that I love them regardless of, the feelings they have in that given moment.
Yeah. And I think, am I right? You got a 5th and a 6th grader. Is that
Yes.
right? So, like if you were to pick a time for kids in the best of times to be emotionally wacky, is that a technical phrase? Wacky?
Absolutely.
It's those middle school years. So you just that just gets amplified so very
Absolutely.
much. Yeah. Well, moving from that very relevant personal perspective to a little bit broader, I'm going to give you plenty of time to riff here in a minute, but I want to drill down on just a couple issues. If there is, that one of KYA's hypotheses is that when it comes to kids, we have common ground, that there should not be Democratic and Republican, rural and urban, legislative and executive branch. If there is a common agenda in that common arena, I tend to think it's child welfare.
Yep.
And you cannot have been as valuable to Maryhurst and that broader child welfare sector without having ideas and hopes. So I'm wondering if you could share with our partners, because so many of them are actively involved. We probably have lots of Maryhurst people viewing right now. What do you hope? What does the governor hope? You all as a team, this administration, what do you hope you see in that area of child welfare, not just now, but in the future when things get back to a little normal and we can really begin fundamental reform efforts?
Mm-hmm. That's a very big question. That's a big question.
We got 30 minutes or so to riff.
I think, the first thing is that the children in Maryhurst care specifically, those are our most severely traumatized and abused wards of our state. And so we collectively as a Commonwealth need to support their healing. And I think that one of the things that I have seen, and I believe that Maryhurst is working to fill that gap, as are places like Family Scholar House, is what happens with those children when they become adults, and how do we continue that path of healing into, bringing them into that space where they can have a successful adulthood. And what that looks like for each of those children is different. Mm-hmm. But if we can find those healthy relationships, a steady job, education going forward, I think that is something we really need to focus on. And I know that Jacqueline and Andy have been working on certain programs to help, including, helping with tuition. I know that both Maryhurst and Family Scholar House have worked on housing for that transition period, where if 18 to 22-year-olds are in college and working. They need a place to live. They need, they still need some of those wraparound services to keep them,
Oh, yeah.
going. And so I think those are things that we need to look at. And I also, I really think that some of the things that Andy has pushed, like making sure everybody has health insurance, that's huge. And I think we really need to make sure that mental health is not stigmatized and that is something that insurance can help with. Because as we go forward, we're going to see a lot more struggling children, because as we come out of this pandemic, kids have been, there have been a lot of struggling children out there before. So now we have
Yeah.
more food insecurity, more physical and mental abuse. A lot of kids have not been able to probably access on a regular basis their classes. So there are a lot of things that we're going to have to look at going forward, but not in the lens of tragedy. I think we need to look at it in the lens of, we are going to help these children to be successful in life. And so we need to give them all the tools that we can to do that. And it is our collective responsibility to make sure that that happens.
Yeah, and that's so true. In my head, the difference in constantly talking about trauma, though trauma is there,
Yep.
versus building resiliency. What I hope we can do as a Commonwealth is create that culture of resiliency, because that's so much more affirmative and hopeful
Yes.
than simply talking what has happened. And I think you're right on target. Were there other, and the answer maybe you kind of wrapped it up because you did a wonderful omnibus look at child welfare, especially that transition. But my guess is that even though you knew that sector when you joined that Maryhurst board, you still didn't know everything. I mean, you learned as you went. Were there looking back, can you remember particular aha moments? It's like, oh my goodness, I never thought of this or that.
Well, I think the aha moment that I had was the girls there just want to be treated like normal kids. And I think that there's often a stigma placed on children who come from situations like many of those girls have come from, but they're still kids and they still have hopes and dreams and are funny and sarcastic and like to eat cookies and, all of these things. We were at the Maryhurst holiday program one year, Andy and myself, and one of the girls sitting at our table started talking about all the music she liked, and she and Andy found that they both had Pat Benatar in common. And it was so funny on so many levels, but they're just normal kids who have had to overcome so much and so much to celebrate, as opposed to looking at them like there's something wrong.
Yeah. Great point. Well, you mentioned that when you moved to Frankfort, you had this list of pet projects that some have had to be put on hold, some are kind of rolling out in a different fashion. But I want to give you plenty of room to kind of talk about that list. So what are a couple of those pet projects, and what are your aspirations, and what are your best hopes moving ahead?
Well, one of the things that I actually learned from my mother-in-law is that as a first lady, you come into the office without any job description at all. And that's a good and a bad, because you need to figure out your own path, which is great because you get to choose the things that really pull at your heartstrings or the things that you're most serious about accomplishing. And I always wanted to do things that involve children. And so through the pandemic, what I've really decided is that the umbrella of mental health in adolescence is the key to all of this. And then, as you know, it's a very big umbrella. And so some of the things that I have specifically thought of from first coming into now include, we lovingly call it First Lady Field Days, and want to really have a fun program to get kids active and moving, which is great for both physical and mental health. We've talked about different types of cooking classes. How do we, on $3 or less, for example, cook a healthy meal at home, or not even cook, but things that children can put together themselves if they need to. We have talked about, or we've talked in length with Feed America, and done some really great things. I want to look at, there's so many great programs for food to go home on the weekends. And I have to pause just to say how grateful I am for all of the people across Kentucky who have made sure that our children have gotten food in their bellies during this pandemic, because so many children only get food at school. And even here in Frankfort, I've seen the bus driving around to drop meals off, and it just warms my heart. It really does. But one thing that I've thought about, and I think, we'll have to kind of dive into it to learn more about it, is what about dinner? So, we can get kids breakfast, we can get them lunch, but then they might not be eating for over 12 hours. So, as we know, having healthy food choices available at all the meal times is crucial to brain development and doing well in school. And I also was able to sign on to a letter with other First Spouses this summer, encouraging Congress to extend funding for those meals that were going home through the summer. And so I'm very proud to have been a part of that letter. And Congress approved this funding so that the meals going home to these kids during the pandemic didn't stop. I also am looking at creating a couple different task forces. I think that military families have their own struggles, just given their circumstances. But I want to hear from the kids who are in those military families and see what's on their minds. I want to do more reading in schools. I want to just go out and see kids and play with them and let them know that I'm there and that they matter.
Yeah.
And even if I can't be there physically right now, I've tried to use social media to just lend my voice and have a positive space for kids to come and just, know that they matter. Every single child in Kentucky matters. And I want to make sure that I can tell as many children in Kentucky that very thing. It's just so important to know.
Yeah, that we so appreciate that. You mentioned your mother-in-law. I remember so vividly that I was had a chance to be in, I guess it's now your dining room, and a data point came up. I remember this so vividly. A data point came up about Kentucky being one of the few states where kids could legally drop out at like 16. So no wonder we had a dropout problem. And she grabbed that data nugget like a dog on a bone and kept shaking it until the law got changed. So you've got a good legacy there to emulate in terms of persistence. So we appreciate that. One of the things that that I would guess is one of the most uncomfortable parts that you've experienced, and I, for one, have been really appreciative that you've been authentic in expressing that, is the toxicity and bifurcation that we experience both as a nation and as a state. I'm somebody who appreciates civic discourse. I appreciate the fact that honorable people can have honorable differences. That's real different than maybe the tonality. I'd like to give you just a few moments to talk to all of us about maybe calling on our better angels as we move ahead.
So I don't normally talk about the politics that go on in Frankfort, but I did actually post something a couple weeks ago because I felt like I had to say something. And to your point earlier, you mentioned that children are not political, and they're not. And I think what has gotten lost in all of this arguing back and forth and us versus them and right versus wrong is that our children are watching and they're paying attention and they're getting lost in the shuffle. If we have people whose job it is to legislate, to help people. They've got to do it. They have to look at those children and think, how can I better their lives? And there are funding opportunities, there are program opportunities, and it is so crucial for children to know that their elected leaders are listening and interested in what they have to say and interested in helping them, because this is the next generation. And we have got to make sure that they are ready to take the reins. And we also have to make sure that they're ready to step into some of these future roles. I also have a lot of conversations with Will and Lila about, having disagreements and what that looks like and how you can civilly disagree with somebody. It doesn't need to come to name calling or blows or back and forth on social media. It is so important to teach our kids how to voice an opinion without making it personal. And so I think that hopefully those are lessons that we can kind of look to the past and say, all right, this is what we've been doing. How do we make it better? And so hopefully that is an opportunity to really talk to our kids about what government can be.
I appreciate that. So one of the themes that I hope we're able to incorporate on every feature that we do this week, I think we have maybe 17 separate events planned, is we are big believers that folks like you actually want to hear from Kentuckians. I worry all the time that partners and folks who are watching this have an idea, but it's kind of intimidating. How in the world would I get an idea about improving food insecurity or increasing emotional health supports to adolescents? How would I even begin to do that to somebody like the First Lady? Can you talk about that? I'm a Kentuckian. I got an idea. It fits one of those Britainy Beshear hot button issues. What should I do?
Please contact my office, whether it's a letter, a phone call, an email. I don't have all the answers. There are a lot of people who have a lot more knowledge than I do, and I want to hear from you. And if it's an idea we can use, I would love to, because we don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel every time. And if we work together, our programs can only be stronger and benefit more people.
That's great. Well, I want to always give our guests sort of the opportunity to benedict. So I'd invite you to kind of think about sort of a closing word to folks who are our partners, who are involved in kid and family issues. Give them a word of hope and give them a word of challenge as we move ahead.
Well, I can't thank you enough for all the work you do, because our children are precious, and every child born is a child who deserves the very best in life. And you are working so hard, every single one of you, no matter what your role is, to make sure that happens. And from a grateful mom and Kentuckian to you, thank you. And I know that is not a sufficient enough sentiment, but Kentucky is better with you here.
Well, recently I found a great quote, Ms. Beshear, from somebody named Dr. Jill Biden. And in a commencement address, she said, show your heart to the world. Can I just say that I appreciate you showing your heart to the Commonwealth? Thanks for being here today. And thanks for being here every day when it comes to Kentucky's kids.